Okay, so in this example, the lead and sales team concept build. So we have our supervisor and standard command here, although I replaced the variable with the hard-coded names just for the purpose of this, but typically we would have this here. Okay, each worker will perform a task, and then when finished, respond with finished. Okay. Maximum number of times that a call can recurse. This is interesting because I have to do some more reading into the Langgraph aspect of it, because I guess this could end up being costly if somehow not monitored correctly or if some kind of error occurs. Okay. So supervisor powers these two workers, where this one acts as a lead researcher. And then when we bring up its prompt, you see here relatively generic, but still a pretty good prompt that I got from the, basically the initial tutorials for how to set these things up. So we have a variable structure here now. So you'll notice there's company. That's going to be user defined, obviously. There is this, so company that is, right, these are going to change, but just examples here have company, lead person, and then let's see, okay. So that's what those are the variables that the lead searcher has access to. And the way that we work with these variables outside of this initial dev and prototype environment. So first, we need to define the schema and get all of the prompt values straight. This is similar to what we'll see in our custom tool builds, but we basically add a key name. Let's say here it's lead status. Press enter. Don't be tempted to press this because that will not enter it correctly. So only if you get the hit enter key, then you will generate the correct key name here. And then in the value, so typically, we would use question and chat history, but in this case, it's going to be something different. So for now, we can just hard code this, something like that. And then what will happen is in the API, once we're running this into Bubble, we are able to, let's say, okay, go to the curl, show input config, and inside of the workers, we can find these format prompt values. So they have a key name of prompt values that goes into our implementation endpoint for this URL. And then we see that it's the schema for it is a JSON object. So just the standard dictionary with the different keys that we have defined here. So those need to match. And we'll see that later on in more videos and in our office hours in the upcoming weeks. But for now, just know that, whatever, this is very standard behavior, whatever data we need to sort of loosen up and provide access to for the user. In some use cases for us, we will have a lot more variables. So this is just a good starting point. And then, just the important part is, so here, these values are hard-coded, and typically that's obviously never going to be the case, because if we're grabbing a company name or web URL or something like that from user, we need to make sure that's dynamic. So the way that we will do that is once the flow is ready to go, the prompt values can be set to nothing here, just an empty string, and then we will be calling them through this prompt values JSON object inside the body. So it goes into the override config, nested under override config, and then OpenAI or whatever the different key name that we need to target. This is where we would define if company is a dynamic value, then we type out the company key, and then into it, we set dynamically in bubble whatever the user provides basically in one of the input. So let's see. Then for the worker, we have also a simple prompt, yet relatively still good and straightforward. And you see here these prompt variables being used again. This time we have another one new added called lead activity. So we're referencing them everywhere. What will happen is if you don't sort of make sure these are 100% set correctly, meaning they have the curlies around them and the names always match, is the entire Langgraph canvas will fail to be built when you either try to call it via API or chat to it. So it's very important that these prompt variables are, I spent like an hour chasing down an issue that ended up being that because somehow an underscore and it had an extra space after it, and yeah, it just couldn't build. Well, let's see, we have these two prompts loaded in here. This worker, and when you go to format its prompt values, you see here company lead person, lead activity. So everything is still hard-coded here, but again, same principle will apply in that we are able to distinguish worker 0 is this one, worker 01 is this one. So through these key names targeting this prompt values JSON object of sorts, that's how we pass from bubble all the dynamic info into these soon to be sprawling ecosystems. So other than that, it's a very simple build. As you can see here, pretty much every chat model is going to need some sort of cache. So because when we're not caching, we're just running more calls and potentially creating a more disjointed experience. And when we are caching properly on something like Upstat, otherwise the build here is simple, just a couple of workers, separate chat models, and then cache units to make sure that we're computing and reaching out to the web efficiently. By the way, a quick note on Supervisor LLMs versus then additional LLMs with workers. So apparently what is Langgraph saying that you can either use a Supervisor as the primary LLM host runner and then not include any of these other LLMs for each worker. So it wouldn't, what then in essence happens is the workers inherit. That's exactly what they call it. You can just have this pass down effect where the workers just use the same LLM. I've seen it basically both ways. For some reason, this setup feels more intuitive to me, where you do add a different LLM to each one. But I don't really have evidence of what works more efficiently in this. Yeah, so we will need to do a lot more tests and trial and error here, because it's just not clear how much more compute or how many more tokens are being used if it's separate LLMs. My biggest pro for using LLMs separately with workers is that we still will want to sometimes, maybe not always, but have like different temperature settings across the different workers. So if here it's a researcher and then something like a sales rep, there probably could be more creativity installed into this worker's identity versus more complete, just grab data, calculate, do exactly as Supervisor said on something like a researcher or an analyst. So I think it makes sense to do these separate LLMs, but apparently you don't have to. You can just load up this one LLM that then powers the Supervisor, and then just leave the tool chat calling models empty on whatever workers you put in. And yeah, you'll always be able to tell what's mandatory by the little red asterisk. It's an interesting word. So with asterisks, you can absolutely know what you can't leave out, and tool chat models are optional here. Another quick note, which you obviously probably already have seen or will see, is that only certain providers are compatible here. And for our intents and purposes, especially after extensive time now in the Flowise Discord server and LangChain's Discord server as well, I'm pretty much in all of them for Langflow. Anyways, Mistral is really not doing that great with a lot of these tool functionalities. Anthropic is doing pretty well, but just still not great. And then Google is also just starting to pick up there. So what we're doing for initial rollout efforts here is that we're just centering everything around OpenAI. It is still, to this day, the most competent, the most sort of effortless, intuitive, and now fastest tech that we have. So while we will probably use some Gemini, OpenAI in some of the workers, and then some Claude 3 Opus, so the largest, but I don't think we're going to use any Mistrals in here yet, and Grok. I think that's Twitter's or X's new chat agent. Honestly, don't know anything about it, but I highly doubt it can. Basically, I highly doubt any of these other companies are able to completely beat in terms of how the worker responds to the different tools that are attached to it. That's really important. So as soon as you see how much time we're going to be spending in custom tooling and making sure that all workers have the exact data that enriches their functionality, so that back to that whole concept that they're spending less time reaching into their own date-locked or already potentially highly outdated information pools, and instead always go to our either pre-built tools that come in Flowise or the custom tools that we're going to be writing. So that's the full build stuff here. Let's save up and now check it out. What do we see? So it's just a simple... We know that I need a couple, something like that. Let's see if it picks it up. Okay, immediately that, that's another interesting thing about this multi-agentic approach. So in a way, whenever we're using the supervisor module, we are entrusting the supervisor to do this initial, you could see the supervisor is doing the initial prompt. So while the user might state something, the intelligence is actually happening here from LangChain's perspective or implementation. So it's not entirely clear what exactly is happening here. And this would be a point for all of us on the Apex team to look into, because I'm proposing that we do have enrichment happening and more detailed intelligence outside of supervisor Flowise period. So when user enters something in the feed chat input, that gets scanned by a couple of different services and not necessarily going straight to the supervisor. So what we could end up feeding to the supervisor could be, just different than the standard approach. But that remains to be seen. But as you can see here, we have the supervisor has created an assignment, and then a lead sales representative went and used the Brave search tool. So you will always know that which tool has been used when it has that little tool icon, and you could see here the output if you ever want to examine that further. And here's our request. Basically, supervisor receives the action and then gives us the response. So far, I've been able to see really long responses with very detailed, so here you could see there's a comprehensive report being done. You can check these out and obviously try these yourself inside of these flows. But it's very interesting how much you can push through these pipelines. So let's build out this one in a little bit more detail. So I can connect model here. This approach is still using the same structure of different models per. And apparently also another tip and point when working with our Apex, or for everybody within the Apex team, and especially on stuff like this. So apparently within this setup, you actually can go down to 0 on temperatures in order to ensure that your assignments are getting sort of the exact context that the user implied. So prior knowledge to me was that we always worked in that 0.2, 0.3 as the lowest, and then 0.9 or higher as the highest. But now apparently 0 values are okay, and it really again will just depend on what the different canvases are doing. So if this one is planning a specific part of the calendar for the content feed, has only a couple of workers on this team, or we further structure down and have a specific whatever LinkedIn team. But yeah, so here we're using these different models, and then we can be doing all sorts of different things on the temperatures. So for now, I've just been playing around a little bit with this kind of stick to script unequivocally kind of thing. No matter, basically, yeah, it's just whatever supervisor says that you do. And I think it's actually working. It's pretty well. It's just a matter of, again, tuning these things based on performance, but we're literally just inventing all this. So we don't quite have performance yet. So we just have to try and follow best practices or invent our own best practices where needed. Okay, so 4.0, everything, as you could see. And then we have our core setup. Okay, so worker names and worker prompts are mandatory. So if you try to run this feed now, it will fail with what I was saying earlier. Yeah, so we can't build the graph due to, only compatible with function calling model, okay? What we need to do now is set some... Alrighty, so continuing off where we left off in the previous video, and as we look in our meetings today, just the new agentic structure and things flowing in these swim lane types almost. So supervisor having these detailed stacks to manage, and then there is intercommunication happening between the workers and the supervisor giving instructions. So just like we've observed earlier, let's go ahead and actually go through the full process right now and see how much we can knock out in setting one of these up. So that JSON file allows us to have quick and easy movement between the different servers, so that if we decide that on CFGI pipe 1 we're going to run only these types of canvases, then we just import and export through the different menu. Okay, let's go ahead and build out one of these things from scratch. Just actually going to reconnect this. I think this was from our earlier discussion. We're not using the interpreter yet, and yeah, okay. All right, so let's go ahead and start with agent flow canvas and start a new one. Usually this is the convention that I've been following, so we use some color labels from the emoji alphabet to help distinguish things. So when something is red, that means it's not working. A yellow is usually dev or prototype test of some sort. And then green, or the green check mark, that's production. So a really simple, almost like to do versus in progress, so you will see it being either this, and then also at times, I have been using the construction sign to distinguish. So it'll either be like this. Okay, so that means if we're signifying it with the check mark, the green check mark, that means it's live in production, actually being used in the UI. Excuse me. So other than that, for now, I've just been calling these multi-agent canvas, and let's say marketing team. All right, so content marketing team. Fine, yeah. And then you could also say like prototype or dev build. So yeah, whenever something is in yellow or it has the construction, the little sign on it, then yeah, we want to content marketing. Yeah, prototype. And then production has prod usually at the end. Okay, so save. All right, in the canvas, start with supervisor, start with worker. Okay, so the two fundamental things that we are right now using in the brand new Langgraph, I guess it's a subset, is it? Okay, I don't know exactly even what it is yet. I have a lot of studying to do on Langgraph, but this is supervisor and worker are only available inside of the agent flows. And again, another way you'll always know that you're in an agent canvas versus just a regular canvas is in the URL slug of the URL path. So we have the worker, we have the supervisor. As discussed before in one of the previous videos and mentioned, I think, on the call, is that there are two ways to do the LLM setups for this. So you either create a chat model for the supervisor, and when you connect this up and then pass the supervisor LLM to the workers, this will work. This is totally fine. But the only then restriction becomes is that if you're not running individual tool calling chat models for each worker, then whatever settings are dialed in here obviously will be fixed through, sorry, that's Chato Llama. That's not what we wanted. Yeah, as mentioned today, that for the vast majority of our initial MVP, proof of concept, or even maybe early go-to-market efforts, we're just sticking to GPT-4o, so basically the latest and the greatest from OpenAI. So in any case, when we do something like this here, and we set this to being 0.3, and it's just a standard thing, if any of our workers require a more nuanced temperature management, then we probably want to tool those up with their own LLMs. But I've been, honestly, based on what I've read initially, it seems to me that it's just more efficient and better to do an LLM per worker. So we're creating further layers of separation and ensuring that we have full control. So if it's something super that has to be exact as to the request of the supervisor, and now we know we can go down to 0 and it's okay within the context of this, then that's great. But then if we're writing something with another worker that's really creative and we actually do want it to spin up some of its own thinking, quote unquote, based on what the supervisor provides, then we just have that luxury. And of course here there's just a little bit extra stuff to set up, but it seems, yeah, it's fine, we can do that. Okay, so I'm just gonna set these up as 0, because so what apparently I've been seeing and learning is that within these Langgraph setups, when you actually can go down to 0, and that's fine, because yeah, I'm not, again, need to spend some more time with it. But if you went down to 0 on most just regular LLM calls, well, you would definitely get some gibberish, and I have gotten a lot of that in my earlier work. So it's, yeah, interesting what these values will be, and as I mentioned in other videos, and we will all be experimenting with this and probably find some interesting results that nobody really knows yet. But for the sake of this setup for now, we'll include an LLM, everything is set it down to 0, null it out basically. And this makes it very deterministic, right? So if you're still catching on a lot of the Gen AI stuff, the closer you get to 0, the more predictable, deterministic, and the tokens that are being considered, the top end values, everything's just you can just control exact. So if it's like gonna look at a web request and read the web information about something, it'll just do a very, yeah, basically stick to script, never deviate for any reason. And then if you go the higher you are, the closer to 1 and up, then you can introduce, of course, a lot of deviation to what it is that you're trying to achieve with this specific worker setup. So let's see, we have everything connected. As I go through the building process, I like to save frequently. You've probably seen that in other videos, but just, quickly go and basically whenever you have an asterisk showing here, that means you have unsaved work. And then if you don't, then you're good. All right. So let's see. The next step would be for us we can complete the initial chain out and go with, let's see. So the moderation node does need to be set up. By the way, yeah, so the two things that we always try to set up in all flows, moderation should always be hooked up just so that way we can control that part of the experience. And then cache, usually for every actual canvas, but for like stuff that you just prototyping and trying out, especially the more advanced you become, then if it's just trying out, then you don't have to maybe go and use the Upstash or the Redis nodes. Because yeah, so we have both some stuff running internally, and then Upstash hosting the Redis and the Vector instance as well. So Upstash is really mostly for production stuff, where we truly actually need the benefits that it provides and how efficiently it manages the entire cache stack. So when user submits a similar request, and it knows that the agent can pull from cache rather than recompute and rerun that API call. So that all works out. But for trial purposes, just use this in memory cache. The chains can be easily converted, upgraded, or customized on the fly. 1 second. So when using the in-memory cache for initial prototyping, all of that stuff we can convert and do as part of the Matrix team DevOps efforts when we need to promote one of these to a different server and either retool it or whatever. So for now, I'm just, as you can see here, adding these in memories here just to speed some stuff up. Okay, typically, yeah, the initial canvas is what you'll set up first. And in this new setup, as we've seen before, it's all about then the kind of the vertically integrated tooling that will be powering the different workers. But the initial part that I've been finding more interesting and exciting to work with is, well, it's just prompting. So as you could see, each worker is powered by a prompt, as we've already looked at. So for now, let's go ahead and do a quick breakdown of how you as a full stack builder of one of these things could go about the process. So for example, back on prompt based, inside of one of these prompt templates to start with, this is a blueprint that we can use initially as an example and then build on top of and include lots of other stuff from. So what we will do is copy it, and essentially for quickness purposes, let's say we go inside of the main worker's prompt, expand that, essentially use this as a text editor for now. Okay. Act as a marketing agency with 10 years of experience. Your task is to generate a comprehensive marketing plan and content for a given product. Okay. So a lot of these templates that will come from prompt base or reprompted or any of our other resources, right? Internally, even some stuff that we just write and develop ourselves versus stuff that we kick off different little starters and whatnot. Inside of these prompts, typically they will be using square brackets. And like sometimes I've seen a combination of curlies and squares, so they're more arbitrary here. But we have a very strict requirement, a specific system for working with these. What I mean by that is that inside of the prompting to the Langgraph worker, right? So the Langgraph implementation and then how Flowise sort of handles the whole thing. If we want to define something as a variable, then it absolutely has to be in curlies. And the second note on that is that you see here how they define their variables just as like a user would see it, because this is, mostly aimed at like ChatGPT, but we are building something that's obviously using some of those technologies, but we're not, this isn't really how we're supposed to be structuring things on our end, right? So as you see me doing now, I am converting that initial thing to a properly formatted variable. And if we do the rest of them, I'll show you how and why this is significant, as you've already seen in the previous video. And it's very important as to how we structure the new mantra everything when it comes to this respect, and what we templatize inside of variables, and what type of conventions we use. Yeah, you'll hear me talk about this a couple times, but basically here we're defining a couple of variables, as you all are familiar with. We're saying that product becomes a key in this setup. So whatever we pass to this through Bubble or Postman, it will be, so on our current setup, we have content type and product as well, a key. So in that we track these almost IBAN setup, or like basically a UID management system. Okay, sorry, not exactly like that, but anyways, not the point. Product becomes a variable, product description becomes a variable. Let's see, where else are they referencing dynamic values? And currently nowhere else. Okay. So what happens is everything that you declare here in curlies and save then becomes automatically available here in the format prompt values. And as I mentioned in the previous video, so sorry again, not to sound like a broken record, but just to make sure everybody has clarity on how the core fundamentals work here, since we're trying to have everybody lead with that full stack mentality. So when you're thinking in agentic terms, the core prompting is obviously here, and some of this is broken up into different workers, which we'll pull separately. But for now, let's just focus on the core principle of how we define each worker's variable to hard-coded balance. So as you can see here, this is a full kind of comprehensive prompt. It's not super long or detailed as our like production stuff will be, where we actually do go into a lot more, deeper topics there. But this is a full prompt, and what we define here, obviously as its identity in this these hard-coded terms, will then be affected by the different variables. So when we want to pass these things in, we have access to them inside of the development environment, so on the canvas. And what happens is, same thing as I kind of mentioned in previous videos and in the meetings. Actually, sorry, now I can't even remember where I mentioned what, but the idea here is that when you're testing these things, you can hard code a value in, or set a question or a value to come from chat history. But in the specific way that we're doing this, that's not really, it wouldn't be correct to put the question here. So instead, you would say product, you can hard code for testing purposes, right? So depending on what it is, you set this in, and right now, when this flow is run and there is stuff loaded in this hard-coded value, only in the prototyping environment, so product description might fall, cool. Okay, so these values will now be used as so instead of simple stuff, but just to, so product will become Microsoft, and then product description will be Microsoft School. And when we implement this actually in Bubble, we then, or not augment, but we work with these values from the curl that we bring in. We find the 4 workers here, and we, as previously we looked at, we know that our label key is format prompt values, because that's where we're working to put those hard-coded settings in, versus here, whatever we pass in prompt values out of Postman or out of Bubble or any other API development or production environment, N8N, we will be setting a JSON object with the different keys and then the different names. So you would imagine then prompt values here becomes, this exact JSON object is available to us, only instead of Microsoft coming in. These will be dynamic values based on user input in the chat bar and then through whatever other kind of ways that we interface with them. All right, so we have this initial prompt. We can delete these prompts. Okay. And let's break this marketing team initial template prompt into, let's see, act as marketing agency. Okay. So for now, let's say generate the list in this manner for all responses only included. So we do have to modify this a little bit because apparently, so it seems like there does need to be some instruction on telling the different workers to pass data to each other. So first, let's say, okay, we have step 1, ask what is the name of the product. Okay, we're not going to ask. So we're going to just say, prepare a marketing assignment for product with this product description. Okay, and again, guys, this is example stuff for now. I'm not doing my best prompt engineering work at all, just going through the agent creation, the full stack process of it. Product description, nope, this is not there. Step 2, okay, using the answers as reference to generate a comprehensive marketing plan. Yeah, so we'd say description, and then using the answers as reference, comma, generate a comprehensive marketing plan. Oh, looks like there's marketing plan. The plan should be generated by executing these tasks. Okay. So it looks like then the way that this prompt sees the strategy working is we have a target audience narrative, let's say writer or analyst. So as we discussed previously in the meeting and other videos, that then we start thinking of tooling these different workers based on, of course, what it is that they do. It's like a job, right? So target audience narrative writer. Okay, pain points of target market. This feels like it can be combined here into this one worker. And then number 3 is also a combination item, needs ones, yep, and generate a list of 10 SEO keywords. So I would say that if I was looking at this and then asked just to think of it in agentic terms, then we would say that, okay, so target audience narrative, let's say like writer, and we say that your primary responsibility is to generate a paragraph analyzing the target market of the product, include demographics and behaviors. Okay. Then I'm just going to add this, include pain points, identify 8 points. Okay. Output section should look like this. Then we have an example. Honestly, for now, I think, yeah, we will get more intricate with stuff like this. For now, let's just not. And then also delete the bullet here. And also include needs, wants of the target market, identify the different solutions and wants, provide a list with the same format as section 2, and then this item, generate a list of 10 SEO keywords. So this would actually be worker 2, and we've built out some assistants before that are like on the keyword generation side. Yeah, specifically we can recycle some of the prompts there and then add keyword generator worker. Okay, create a, let's say, list of 10 SEO keywords related to the product. So let's put that. And then utilize this in all marketing content generated. Ensure that the usage is natural and human. This, okay, this is okay, but technically the way we're thinking, okay, no, sorry. So then we have, let's look at the numbers, don't need that for now. So target audience writer is worker 1, keyword generator worker 2. Then we have a marketing copy writer. Okay. So very demo instruction here for the prompt engineering side. I don't think it couldn't be any shorter. Generate an engaging marketing copy for product. That's it. If everything was this simple, wouldn't everything be magical? No. So, of course, we trust a lot here basically to the LLM and go against that grain that we lead with, is that no stale data and we have to check everything. But again, for now, as we're learning how to build these, so we have a marketing copyright worker and it knows to generate an engaging marketing copy. And let's just like, fine, let's make it vague and see what it does initially by itself. So video ad script writer is another worker and generate a 30-second script for a video based on, again, add the variable product with the following description. And here I say product. Oh yeah, so the variable naming conventions, yes, please everybody use snake, is that right? All lowercase, underscores. This is the same convention we use in all our Postgres DBs, and it's pretty common, yeah, everywhere. You will see a lot of the all caps things, but that's more so for product, kind of user-facing, or not user-facing, but that is not like dev, actual stuff in dev that matters. So inside of, we do camel case in much of Flowise because it's TypeScript, JavaScript. But for these kinds of JSON-oriented variable passing, it's a standard kind of all lowercase. And when you're defining new variables, keep the names short. We have gone into different levels, some like 3-4 word combinations to really create separation. It just depends on the use case, but honestly, a lot of times the shorter, the better. Okay, so we have a video script writer who generates 30-second script based on product, has a description, include directing commentary such as camera actions, music suggestions. Great, all right. And then final worker is an email marketing. Yeah, what is that? Copywriters. Yeah, generate 3 marketing emails. One should be aimed at new customers and pointing out how the product solves one or more pain points. One should be aimed at new customers and use needs ones. Okay. So there's a format here. This is honestly, I think it was a mistake anyways. Okay, so now we have this stuff. I'll copy it over and just save it just in case something happens, okay? Let's take a look. We have the supervisor that essentially carries out this top part, and then we can transfer over, sorry, what is this? Provide a list with the same format as section 2, but we destroyed the section. Okay, formatting of lists and stuff, that's very utilitarian, so not the point here. So let's do target audience narrative writer, Command X. Okay, so we are in, so the actual thing is supposed to just go here. So we'll say, for now, I'm just going to copy it there. Okay, let's do this a little bit. Keyword generator worker, copy that. That actually goes into another node. Okay, so this worker, still not super clear to know which one is what, especially the more of these that we will develop. So if you are into stickies and to have more granular control, you can use utilities in a sticky note and say, this is, worker 1, whatever name will be their target audience narrative. Okay, save, misspelled. Great, so you could do stuff like this, and this is helpful, but honestly, the more complex the canvases become, it just because you can't attach things in groups yet. It's like React Flow, the library that's being used underneath this platform that's providing all the canvas functionality, is really feature rich. But Flowise team is really bent on making sure that they lead with their core product, which is absolutely right, and what we will be doing, what any really good startup does. We don't care what the little bells and whistles are, as long as this stuff works really well. So worker name is going to be this. Okay, I should probably fix that. Then in here, on the second worker, we could expand into keyword generator worker, okay? And you can use stuff like this. So you are a keyword generation guru with 100 years of experience in SEO and all things keywords for ads and topical analysis. So this whole concept of it's still not exactly fully like scientifically backed, but when you prompt these LLMs in a certain way, they complete tasks in a certain way, or the way they do the processing. So I've seen definitely a lot of this, like talking to it. That's what we've essentially been doing in our stuff, but you would be, you're telling it what it is. In these specific worker prompts, we're probably going to be shorter than in some of our like master content assignment writers. But initially, you still want to say keywords for ads and topical analysis. So you are, and then not a worker, but team member. And then let's say your task is to receive input from the supervisor and other team members. This is that key that's being used in the supervisor. And they have that actually set up as a variable, and I still need to verify what exactly that means, that it knows. That's how the supervisor knows all the different names that we add to the workers. So we don't actually need to, sorry, 1 second. So if you save this, go supervisor additional parameters, and the prompt for the master supervisor parent level, you see here, you're the supervisor tasked with managing in conversation. This is like the standard boilerplate from Langgraph. That's currently the initial iteration of how we're supposed to be prompting these. So I have not gone into great detail myself yet in exploring in terms of what actually is best practices here and how much content we could fit or should fit. But in any case, that the supervisor has access to this variable team members, and this comes from the Flowise setup, and I'm not entirely sure if this is because Langgraph defines it as such, or this is completely arbitrary and provided by Flowise. So yeah, whenever it's referenced to team members, then when we're talking to this worker, we can also say team members. Let's see, where was I here? Yeah, your task is to provide. Okay, see, yeah, team members, we mentioned, that's some topical, okay. And other team members, create a list of 10 SEO keywords related to the product. So for the tooling of this specific worker agent, we would include tools that obviously have to do with endpoints that are pulling from different SEO related, so maybe SEMrush and all the big enterprise level platforms, and we would include those to enrich and enable its real-time context. And we will go over that in more detail. So your task is here to create a list and utilize this list in all marketing. And then finally you could say, pass your work to other team members when necessary. All right, so save this. Then the next worker is going to be the Copywriter. I think we're going to actually need more than what I have set up initially. So let's say here, marketing copywriter worker. And again, just modify a little bit. You are worker, your primary role and responsibilities are to generate engaging marketing copy for product. Okay, so super basic, right? Share your work with other team members. All right, so you could see then on all the prompt format values that whatever you have inside of that prompt as a variable, it appears here as a key, and then this key becomes available to us in the API that we bring things into Bubble into. And if we're directly interfacing this specific setup inside of NA10 or Mate. So product here has an empty string now attached to it. And then let's go into video ad script writer. Okay, open this up. Okay, again, same process. Doesn't matter to do this. Okay, you're an ad script. Let's see, typically, yeah, I think that's just writer. Your core responsibilities generate a 30-second script for a video based on product. Yep. Okay, and we have our same variables being passed. A content marketing agent team. All right, and then again, sort of like, it's again prompt engineering. Yeah, there's now entire careers starting to be built around that, and there's many people out there who are very good at prompts, so much better than me or any of us. And then that's like maybe all they do, and they sell their stuff to the marketplaces. So of course we want to champion and cherish the artists in this respect, because working with these LLMs without prompting, it wouldn't even be probably. We would not be getting the results. Nobody would be, right? Even ChatGPT itself, there's so much prompting happening there, it's ridiculous. So in the engineering stuff, it's this isn't code, but still technically what goes here and what order it's arranged, which variables it's using, like in some cases it's way more important than code. Because if just the direct code implementation holds like the structure and the utilitarian stuff of this, actually either produces the magic or generates some complete gibberish and totally misfires, which we might see in my initial builds when I was just modeling this over the weekend and stuff. It's easy to even just mess up. I'm gonna button this up with share your work with your teammate agents and provide full responses to the supervisor. Okay. All right. So let's see. Who else do we have left? Do we have an email marketing copywriter? Okay. So I'm going to, as you see, we ran out. Typically, it's better to just, copy over the instances rather than setting things up from scratch, from going to the plus. So in the initial build outs, you use more of the plus menu, but then further after that, then you're just here. Okay. So let's see, keyword generation guru, marketing, copywriter, team member. Yes, I'm still trying to figure out if specifying this whole team thing to the Langgraph entity is really important, or if supervisor and worker truly have that covered. So I think we'll need to explore that a little bit more as a team to see, what do we need to be doing here, kind of thing. So you are marketing copywriter. Yep. Okay. All right. Video script work. Okay. Something like that. Then we have script writer. So let's see. I think it was, let's delete the here. No, wait, I'm sorry. Email marketing copywriter. Yeah. Okay. So drop you are an email marketing copywriter within team of agents. Your core responsibilities and role is to generate. So I think what we'll be doing a lot in the future too is also template variabilizing the amounts, obviously. So we could have somebody want 30 marketing emails, or somebody just wants one. So for now, we're just leaving these as hard code values again, because for the sake of this training, and this is focused on the overall system still, how the different marquee elements work. But you could easily say, take out that and then say your role is to generate, I would use a variable name like marketing email count, right? Or whatever it might be. And then that becomes a variable and it's accessible to us and we're all set. So for now, 3 marketing emails. One should be aimed at new customers. One should be aimed at new customers and use one. Okay. And then share your work. All right. And then final. So actually, let's see. We would need here, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. We would need here a new LLM. And then that goes here. Okay. I'll grab this final identity. Yeah, imagine like you're making fake IDs. Fake IDs for AI so that they can deliver top notch. Only these IDs, I guess, aren't fake. They're generic, but Anyway, so video script writer, one more would be this. If you notice, yeah, I'm actually like, you need to go paragraph. Wait, you know what? Never mind. I think that's unnecessary. Okay, target audience narrative writer. Okay, that seems correct. So a target audience, it's actually, so the way that this is breaking down now, put, okay, so for the target, let's see, I'm gonna rewrite a marketing department manager. So in this case, or the whole arbitrary year value is still up in debate, but actually a little bit of fun story about that. Maybe some of you heard, like a bunch of memes came out, I think it was a couple months ago, about people like bribing ChatGPT, like, here, I'll employ you for life and slip you a 20 every time you do a good job. And some people were swearing by the quality of the results were exponentially better. So this is what we're doing here. Still trying to figure out if this specific sort of parts of our prompting syntax are best practices or valid or necessary at all. So what we're doing here, you are actually seeing, I'm gonna delete this. I think we can delete this. Okay. So the marketing department manager is still a worker. So the setup is that, I guess, you would see the supervisor entity as just the router. What we're doing with the supervisor essentially is employing a multi-agentic structure or a multi-team member based membrane. Would that be the word here, maybe? And we are allowing the supervisor to administer the stuff. But if we want a manager role still here, then that's a worker. And this marketing department manager is going to, have experience. Task is to generate comprehensive marketing plan and content for a given product. So we're gonna templatize. Okay. Generate the list in this manner for all responses. Okay. So let's see, when you receive assignment instruction from the supervisor or other team members, your goal is to prepare for all responses. Okay, or other team members, your goal is to prepare a marketing, okay, again, just for now, marketing plan. Your primary responsibility, you can combine that, is to generate your, actually, this way we shouldn't, your other responsibilities include generating a paragraph analyzing the target market of a product, include demographics and behaviors, include age, okay, so stuff that we consolidated earlier, pain points, okay, so formatting maybe a little bit often, share your work and any other instructions with the supervisor and other team members. Okay, gotta keep consistency here. All right, so let's see. That now has 4 at least properly formatted things. So this is email marketing, copywriter. Okay. All right, so that basically completes our core canvas setup in a very, so that completes our canvas here. As you can see, I'm just attaching these additional cache units, which are not technically, again, by the way, LLMs will run without cache attached to them. So this is not mandatory at all. As I mentioned earlier, upstash or in memory, this is optional no matter what flavor of it you use. So caching we do in production, again, because we want to speed up requests. We want to basically utilize best programming practices. And there's a big reason why, of course, cache stores exist. So set this up, currently not doing tools just yet. Then let's say keyword generation guru. So yeah, again, a 4-person team with a administrator running that team, and there's a clear directive given to each and every single team member. So let's see, marketing copywriter, worker, one second, manager. Okay, so a lot of copy pasting, video script writer. That's 4. All right, email marketing copywriter. So let's now see and do a quick check whether all of our credentials are filled in. So temperatures, we're starting things out with just zeros on the worker. Actually, you know what? I want to increase that to 0.3. So just the tads still maintain. This is to that discussion of temperatures, independent settings. So temperature can be more creative on things that for entities that we want, obviously, to be more, use their kind of massive LLM compute resources. But in instances when we're using LLMs that are just like for brains, and we really just want them to crunch compute specific task and return that, then we can go down as low as 0. Okay, everything does look like it's correct on the main supervisor. So some additional things is if you go on the parameters here, you can specify these. But honestly, pretty much we might start using some of them, but up until now, we never have been using these in this context for some raw API calls and stuff like that, but that's different. So then the last thing I think that we need to do now is, since we're testing in here, these variables are not really running at runtime, so to speak. So it's not like us making an API call to this entity once it becomes an endpoint. So we do need to pre-code some values here, because pretty much in every identity we say that everything is referencing product and product description. Okay. So what I'll do is just go to the different ones, and you could see here that, okay, keyword generation guru is not doing product, but we are. So what happens here, the quick tip is that when it enables this pop-up, then you need to click back into the value before you, okay, let's see. I'm going to say Microsoft. You can use the same, obviously, value, but this is what I mean back to that whole, some of our canvases might have 20 or 10 different keys that we're pushing all these dynamic values in, but for now, just know that, these need to be referenced as something inside of. Okay, so this worker, how the product, see, because we did not templatize this. So I'll say product. The third should be aimed at existing customers. Okay. Same with this, product description. Okay. Oh, you see, I typed while that little thing was up, and case of Microsoft, product description, the little edit pencil. Come on. Microsoft is cool. Is it though? Okay. What else? Who else is missing? Prompt. Yep. Okay. All right. I'm saving after each path is just because, it's just, you might not need to or be as frequent about it as I am, but okay. So everything seems to be all right. Okay. So let's kick this off and see what happens. So some occasional hello. I'm just gonna hard code mention it as well. I need a full marketing plan, layout, and all available assets from the team members for my company, which is Microsoft, and actually wait for my company. We're going to be making quite a bit of intelligence-based things that are happening in the input. But initially, these kind of core setup efforts consist of us just basically being able to send variables And yeah, so at this point, we're not even doing that. We're just hard coding, testing the entire system before we even bring it out. So which is Microsoft. I think that's it. Okay, so let's just see what it does when it's something, a request like this. Okay, so this will happen sometimes. And this is what happened to me in the beginning. If worker input variables values are not provided, which means that somewhere there is a key that is essentially not done correctly. So what we should then do is go through each and every prompt where this is mentioned. So product here looks correct. Product description here looks correct. Product. Okay, so it doesn't tell you exactly which node it's coming from. A little bit annoying, but we know that we're for sure providing values here. What we're potentially not doing is, one second, let me see if I can. Product, okay, so that still seems correct. A very simple prompt there. One of these nodes, though, has an issue. Here. See, I'm messing it up. Maybe that's actually... Yeah, there's a couple, like when doing this new approach, again, because before in the single canvases, it was a little bit different. So now we're adapting to a new system. Okay, so everything seems... yeah, so looks like this email marketing copywriter is lacking context, right? So dropped because nothing was there. So product would need to be defined. We save. So basically, yeah, whenever you save, you push to what's happening, all the stuff underneath the hood. So the way to commit your new Langgraph, this whole canvas that has this ID and its own entity via that JSON object that with the exportable stuff. So you just need to make sure, yeah, that we are all over covered in what we're providing. So it looks like we were missing a value there. So if that's it, we save up, we commit it. As you can see here, I completely avoided even the prompt, right? And I've also seen this being done. It's interesting how we apparently have a lot of flexibility in how we kick these things off and how much specificity we provide, how many tools. The layers just go nonstop. But as you can see here, the supervisor now is working with the team. So first it reached out to the copywriter, grabbed all the different available things that the copywriter is told to do, and it has a fixed value. It's meant to provide 3 things. And then we now have work from the video script writer, and it looks like we have an issue in that, oh no, every single worker was consulted. So keyword generation guru spit out exactly what we need here without consulting any tools. So this raw example is running on kind of stale data. But as you could see here, there is direct autonomous communication between keyword generation guru says, hey, okay, here you go. I'm passing this off to the copywriter for your further content writing. Supervisor then receives, it's like an admin desk at an office. They receive the fact that this worker completed their stuff, and off they go to their next assignment. Now, of course, okay, we're seeing a lot of generic results and maybe not exactly what we're going to be providing to our users. But again, right now we are learning about the framework itself. And this is a big part of the new framework. So marketing copywriter develops his content. Then we have a new set, dynamic prompt that was auto-generated by the supervisor component. Again, we did not intervene in that sense at all. All we did was program the raw identities, the PIs, the promptized identities of the workers, and then use the stock identity of the supervisor. So we have responses from each one. And this is a full stack loop of creating one of these. And then as we see in another video or other videos, that we can then connect all the tools possible. And so one thing that then we can now also take a look at is actually bringing this into Bubble. So for now, starting to step out of just our Flowise AI studio. So the typical workflow for when you're actually taking one of these and graduating them or promoting them from like the prototype and the dev experience, typically what we will do is, let's see, so grab the endpoint, and usually we will run keys on all actual production endpoints. So you have a couple of keys, and if we haven't talked about that or you haven't been exposed to it yet, so what you see here is different from credentials management, and it's what this essentially allows us to do is manage our own API key center. So if we had 30 servers or 30 different front ends or whatever kind of mixed use systems, and we want to create our own keys, you can either do that from here on adding a new key, or you can step out to the main dashboard console view and then go to not credentials, but API keys, right? And on API keys, you can see here that we have this is like our keys that right? So whenever we're using credentials from other platforms, that's because we're connecting to them. But this is basically Bubble is connecting to us, right? Even if it's us connecting to us, this is the fundamental key. So I could say Bubble, let's just go with the standard format, Genuity, Bubble, Flowise, mantra, key, right? So when we create this key, for all of you who are already familiar with that's it. We've created a protectable this is what would be used as in the authorization header for anybody that wants to make a request to the endpoints that are protected by any one of these keys, right? So pretty simple, but still a good concept. So I'll copy this, a Genuity, Bubble, Flowise, mantra key, and then we go to our agent flows, we pull up our latest canvas, and then we come to up here in the top right corner, the code, the embedder, basically the API embedder pop-up. So our way for this would be working when you're initially testing these things, by the way. So for example, you can, if you're doing no authorization and stuff, you literally can just grab this link. You see our domain name on whatever server you're testing this on. So this is, again, still on that Genius Cloud. But then if invalid chatbot for whatever reason, because maybe make public is not on. Yeah, so if you're just doing basic testing or you want to, experiment itself, other than here, you can load it into a page and start talking with it right away. And this is the same embedder that is part of their own Flowise's preview thing. So it's a similar experience, but we could basically run these in this way. But of course, the UI is very limited. There's a couple of other limitations, so we just need the curl. So for the curl, always you want to see the input config, because typically you will be bringing in more params than just the initial core. But in order to set up an endpoint, you go curl, authorize it to whatever key you're using. So now you see here that we have a standard bearer-based approach into the auth header, and we have this full curl that we just copy, and then we implement like this. So you go to API connector, you find the relevant, this is going to change, by the way. You can go through this structure for everyone who is on the Bubble side of things, but we are going to be deprecating some of the things that are just not used at all, then others are going to be rearranged. And so for now, let's go through the process of going from scratch if you're doing your own API group assignment here, right? So I'm going to add another API, and I'm going to say, let's just say API. So everything here should start, I think we're going to reduce a little bit of the emojis in the coming weeks. So make the noise smaller and just everything more visible. but everything should still always start for these things as underscore API, or in this case, it's emoji API, because the way that we reference everything then in the project on the front end, in the expression builders, we do need to quick access this sometimes, especially in the workflows section. So API, Flowise, and let's just say mantra, okay? So we can then import from curl and import like this, okay? Then we have this blank call, don't need that, all right? Then we can rename this, something like for now, mantra, agent, entity, content, marketing, team, what's going on? Team endpoint, okay. All right, so then we want to select this as an action. Okay, everything in the URL looks correct. We're hitting our base URL here. Actually, we have base would be here, then the endpoint's always prediction, and then the random string, the UUID essentially for the chat canvas, or the Langgraph canvas that this belongs to is here. Then since we imported from curl, our auth and content type are coming in here. So remember, currently on our test setup, we still have those hard-coded values baked in. So for now, again, we're going to simplify this thing and just show how to call this endpoint. So you can set these to private when you're working. There's really never any reason. What this does, it doesn't fully create any kind of security restrictions, but this is just not visible then inside of the different workflows and database-related ops. Like, we just don't need. We know this is going to stay fixed. Then we're sending body type JSONs, but we have the ability to send pretty much anything. So files for our file operations, then some different types here. So very similar to Postman, just obviously not as feature rich. And again, this is our actual entry point to where all the different data points come in and out, versus Postman will host our API management center, which has like all the information about this specific content marketing team. If it gets promoted, and it's a part of mantra, then boom, we have to document it. Okay. So here, the way it works in Bubble is that anything in your URL path, for example, so to back up a little bit, if I do square brackets in the URL, okay, and then I'm going to just copy this, but delete it, and then I'm going to say chat flow, or actually let's be agent flow ID. So when I square bracket here, that it adds an automatic key, and that's how we move things around in Bubble through the different URL paths. So especially when working with a lot of rapid API stuff that's potentially going to be running some of it directly through Bubble endpoints, we define and delineate paths or dynamic data here through these things. So I've just copied over the value, and now this value will be shown in the place of this. It's a variable basically. So again, we don't private this. And then in the body of this call, so the only mandatory thing that goes to our Flowise, that has to be going to our Flowise. So here, as you can see, the initial implementation drop curl, the only true parameter is just this thing called question. So the question can contain a whole bunch of other sub things, and we can also, of course, include more keys as are available. But for now, to keep it simple, one key, and in order to make a value dynamic inside the body, you see here we have a little tip that says we use, okay, so this is question, and yep, that's it. So now we get this key here. We could just say create a short marketing plan and all available assets from team members or my product, which is Microsoft. Okay, so for the initialization purposes, this is obviously going to be screwed up because we're hard coding this value in here, and that's technically, yeah, it could work like this, but we haven't fully set up the whole dynamic chain. So I'll do that in an upcoming video, but for now, we should be able to go ahead and, yep, let's capture the response headers. This field we don't really use too much anymore, just depends on how the setup is, but again, that'll be a more advanced lesson for only those working with it. Okay, so then we have this ability to, yeah, you'll see that the red saying that it's not on, but if we have everything, so not on, it's not initialized. So every call before it can be used correctly in the platform needs to go and be initialized through this process here in the API connector. So let's see what happens actually. So typically if you have a 503 or some sort of server related issue, you're going to get hit with that pretty much right away. So you know that fundamentally if you fail something, it'll be quick. If it's doing stuff like this, as we saw in the demo or in the just a second ago in how the response was being returned, there it is streamed, but here in this initializer, obviously we don't have that streaming ability, so we have to wait a little bit. So now you get this initialization, which means we're good. We went through. You can show raw data here, and you can see now all of the different responses that came back. And I already can see here that potentially something happened. Either we're not seeing the full response, but as you saw in our tester, we have responses from all the workers. But this was actually my first initialization of one of these into Bubble. So now it seems like we have a clear path of building these in Flowise. So I'll be spending a lot more time on figuring out how to work with these. But yeah, so basically when you initialize a call, a couple of things happen. The schema for that call becomes available all throughout. It propagates through Bubble, and we're able to then access any of these values when we're working either as workflows or in any other part of the platform. So you'll get used to seeing chat ID. That will be a huge parameter that we work with. This is what's going to be the master ID for all of the documentation for all the different versions of all the different agent flows we have. So we're always going to be referencing something like, okay, we just created this specific chat flow. It's great. Now we have to commit it to our system. So we start with tracking on the ID, then chat message ID. So if you have the chat ID, think of it as like even what we're doing on feeds or what is done on ChatGPT. Your chat belongs to a thread. It's the master parent level entity. It's either a feed, chat-based conversation as on ChatGPT, or some form of thing that hosts actual messages. So then the chat message ID is the exact ID of the message that you received in response. So throughout the user conversation and lifecycle, more often than not, the chat ID will stay the same, especially in the context of feeds, because we obviously want to maintain context there. But chat message IDs will be completely different all the time. And then session ID, something also completely different, but it's an arbitrary ID value that we can use, and we have used that in the past before as well. Then we have agent reasoning list. This is something new to this new agentic Langgraph thing that we've just went through. And then, yeah, just a couple of utilitarian headers related. And yeah, so if you save, you now see that the red marker is gone. And when somebody looks at this endpoint, it's your role basically to hand it off. We just use these simple things, just like we discussed before. But it's either green for production, meaning it's actually either being implemented or is already implemented in the UI somewhere, or yellow or orange or red. So just to define different phases, because we are going to have quite a few of these things as we already do. And it's really going to become important for us not to, be super like disorganized here. Actually, this is a little bit disorganized right now. There's just some, but yeah, so what we've done here is created a full agent. We've brought it out to Bubble, enabled Bubble now to access the responses from this and send responses inside of this question parameter.
What of course can also happen is that, yeah, let's cover that in a different video. So I think good for now. If there's, we'll cover more questions and topics on office hours coming up. But yep, you feel free to pause this video, rewatch it, especially if your work is going to include creating many of these multi-agentic canvases. All right, sounds good, and see you all soon.